Hello, and welcome to episode 39 of Intercultural Insiders. My name is John McGraw, and I help newcomers, expats, and businesses connect across cultures to succeed in less time and pain. I am the founder of Hiyaku Coaching, which is dedicated to helping you create your pathway to success in a new culture. The purpose of Intercultural Insiders is to share the stories of people with intercultural experiences. So if you're feeling isolated or lost, you can hear something from the guests' experiences that could help you, even if it's just a reminder that you're not alone. Today is part one of a great conversation with David Mendoza. But before we get into that, there's another event coming up that I want to bring attention to. The next session of Coffee with SOS, focusing on power skills for your success in Canada, on Saturday, August 12th at 10 a.m. So power skills are sometimes referred to as soft skills, personal skills, or 21st century skills. And a 2019 LinkedIn report revealed that 91% of talent management professionals consider soft skills just as, if not more important than hard skills. So any newcomer looking for a job in Canada can see the role soft skills play in interviews and in being hired for positions in Canada. So make sure to join on Saturday, August 12th at 10 a.m. to hear HR professional Liliana Nakamura, noted LinkedIn optimization expert Hamad Siddiqui, and myself as we discuss power skills and how to leverage them in the Canadian job market and workplace. This is a virtual event, so follow the QR code on the screen to register. Again, that's Coffee with SOS, Power Skills for Your Success in Canada, on Saturday, August 12th at 10 a.m. And with that said, let's get into our interview with David Mendoza. This is part one of a two-part interview. David is the CEO of Orbit 5 and a multilingual educator with over 10 years of experience designing and facilitating engaging solutions to help international students and newcomers increase their confidence to land ideal jobs in less than 15 weeks. In today's session, we talk about David's experiences with entrepreneurship and how teaching private English lessons sparked his interest in entrepreneurship and taught him the value of taking risks. Also, building community. David shares impactful experiences from his teaching career that highlight the importance of honesty, collaboration, and cultural diversity. And finally, we talk about networking, and self-worth, encouraging students to eliminate the self-undermining language and understand that everyone has value to add. And as always, this interview is pre-recorded. However, as you can see right now, David is live in the chat. So feel free to ask questions and comment during the interview and use this as an opportunity not only to connect with David and myself, but also with the other audience members. So I encourage you to start off by posting where you're joining us from and get that conversation going, make yourself visible, and increase the opportunity to connect with others. So, without further wait, let's get into part one of the conversation with David Mendoza. David, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, John, for having me as a guest. We met a couple of weeks ago through a mutual connection. When you are new to the country, here, Canada specifically, your network is your net worth. And it's very important for you to build a robust connections and network with professionals that can help you thrive in your chosen fields. My name is David Mendoza, as you mentioned before. I'm originally from Colombia in South America. I moved to Canada 17 years ago in the year 2006. I'm a multilingual educator and I'm the CEO of Orbit 5, where we train international students and newcomers to land jobs in less than 15 weeks. In addition to that, I'm a massive advocate of experiential learning. The work that I do with my clients and my students expose them to real life situations that help them upskill and stand out in the market. And in addition to that, I'm a home cook. I'm an avid traveler. I'm a language aficionado. And I'm also a professor at George Brown College as well on a part-time basis.
Your network is your net worth. I love that saying. And I'd love to talk more about that and Orbit 5 and everything else you're doing. But I'd like to get a sense of your early experiences, even before you arrived in Canada, what some of your intercultural experiences may have been.
There you go. Thank you so much. I love that question. I was born and raised in Colombia, and I lived there for the first 19 years of my life. And it was a pretty homogeneous society, so I didn't have a lot of intercultural exposure, if you will, more than my own interest in cultures and languages and music and all that stuff, right? One of the things that I did to learn English or to take the learning beyond the classroom from school was music. So back in the day, we had CDs, and the CDs had a booklet, and those booklets had the lyrics of the song. So what I would do, I would listen to a song and follow along with the lyrics. And that helped me not only to improve my vocabulary, but my pronunciation as well. So I guess that's some kind of intercultural connection with another language and another culture. Then when I was 19, I had the chance to go to the United Kingdom, to a city called Bournemouth in the south coast of England as an international student to improve my English. And that was the first time where I experienced the world and other cultures. And immediately it's David's life before being an international student and after being an international student. It opened my eyes. It made me more open-minded. It changed my personality as well. I was very shy when I was growing up. And then I think this just pushed me to have my voice heard and to connect with people and just go beyond the things that I knew and things that I could challenge and fight my own prejudices and biases that I had grown up with. So it was a beautiful experience. It was a language school. So we had people from all over the world. We had people from Colombia like myself, and there were Brazilians and Italians and Germans and Japanese and Koreans, people from everywhere. So it was a really nice experience because I was there by myself. So I had to push, right? And to get out of my comfort zone to make friends and stuff. And I loved the experience. I experienced a couple of remarkable things. Now sushi it's a given. It's mainstream. But back in 1998, nobody talked about sushi. Nobody had tried sushi there, right? And the first time I tried sushi was actually at the house of one of her Japanese friends. She and her roommates, they invited me, an Argentinian guy, and a Swiss guy to have sushi at their place. So it was a really interesting story and experience because it was handmade. None of us had never tried it before. And they told us about the story behind sushi and what it represented and the chopsticks and all that stuff. And like the art that comes with Japanese food and cuisine. So those were some of the things that fascinated me about culture and languages and stuff.
What I love is that even before you became an international student, you found a way to engage with the language in a way that resonated with you as someone who spent over 15 years as an ESL instructor and educator. Right. I really tried to encourage my students who were, for example, coming to get into colleges here in Canada, if they were struggling with reading, what do you like to read about? Because they would focus on these academic texts. And do you like reading those in your own language? Well, not really. Right. Okay, so what do you like reading? So that focus on that. Do you like sports? Okay, so find some books or some newspaper articles in the sports section, for example. Yeah. Also, taking advantage of when you were in that situation in that school, taking the time to connect with other students. Because sometimes we assume that if you go to another place, it's a given that you're going to pick up other cultures, but that's not necessarily true.
You know what? I want to mention something about that because I think it's a very important point too, right? As I mentioned before, there were students from all over the world, but in that school, there were 3 big clusters, right? Colombians, Swiss, and Japanese. And then other people from other places, right? I got along with everyone because that's my personality. I like people. I get along with people, but strategically, because I knew that my time in England was limited, right? And I knew that I had to come from being good at English to being bilingual fully, right? And if I wanted to be bilingual, I had to force myself to speak in English and think in English and dream in English, right? There was not another way, right? So I hang out and I got along with everyone who spoke my mother tongue, right? But my friends that I chose to hang out with all the time were not people who spoke Spanish, right? Now, it was a night out at the pub and all the school was there. Absolutely. It was a party at the club. We all went, and I made really good friends with the Colombians because we hung out in Colombia back when we came back and whatnot. But I chose to make friends with people from their culture for a couple of reasons, right? To connect with them and their culture in a deeper level and to improve my English communication abilities. And that's something that I always encourage people to do when they come here. It's easier for me as a Colombian to hang out with a Latino, with a Mexican, with an Argentinian, with a Peruvian, right? But if I am investing $20,000 a year in education, right? And I just go to college and I only sit down with people who speak Spanish, my communication abilities are not going to improve. So what is the point of investing all that money if you are just changing geographic locations? And it's a shame because it happens a lot. And as a professor, I've seen that in the classroom, in the colleges, right? There's a lot of international students and there's clusters, right? And we need to challenge those things. We need to encourage people to push themselves to experience cultures and other things, at least just for the sake of improving the language, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only is that going to help in terms of the language skills, but also in terms of being able to work and connect with people from other cultures too.
Right.
And if you're looking to work in Canada, particularly in a larger city, you're going to be interacting with people from many different cultures who have many different ways of approaching things. So you had those experiences. Where did your journey take you from there?
So at that point, I was taking a business program at university back home. So I returned to complete the program that I hated, by the way. I didn't like it at all. So then when I graduated, I started looking for jobs. And the thing, John, is when I graduated from university, I was more lost than when I started, to be honest with you, right? And then I missed my time abroad a lot. It was pretty tough for me to go back to Colombia because I had a fantastic time, right? So I started looking for jobs and I was not getting the jobs because I guess people saw this guy like, he's all over the place and he just doesn't know what he wants. So there came an opportunity to my life to teach English as a second language at a language center. I was never expecting that. And I never thought that I was going to end up in education because I had a very negative experience with education myself growing up. I found it very authoritarian and just, if you are not the person who is into mathematics, you're dumb. And that's how I felt in the system, right? Invisible. So I didn't like that. So I had a very bad experience. But then when I started teaching English, and it happened, right? I went to a place and then they said this is to teach English, right? And then I remember a friend called me and he's like, how was the interview? And I told him this is to teach English as a second language. And he said, start teaching English until you find a job. And I'm like, sure, why not? And I ended up teaching English like for a good 2 years before I moved to Canada, right? But it changed my life. And you know how people talk about passion and all that stuff. I had no idea what my passion was. I had no idea what my calling was, right? But by trying something that was so out of the ordinary, I found my calling and I found my passion of working in education and with students, right? And because I saw that I had the ability to see people's potential, and when the person was committed, I could help them exploit that potential to attain what they wanted. And I saw that I had that power in me and the connection that I made and an empathetic approach to help people see, to trust the process and to enjoy the process of learning a language in that case, right? So that happened for a couple of years. I really enjoyed it. And it's funny because that feeling of shame, right? Because, oh my God, I'm just an English teacher and my friends are working at a bank and I went to university 5 years. And I'm just teaching English, right? But I was the happiest of them all. I remember I would go out with other teachers and I would invite my friends from university. And they were like, oh my God, we want to be you. We want to have this job. We want this, right? So it's interesting because it's like also the perceptions that society has on you and the pressure that you have because of society. So it took me a while to come to terms to the idea that I was really enjoying what I was doing and I couldn't care less about working at a bank or a financial institution. One thing that happened is interesting is that at that job, I took my first steps into entrepreneurship because there was one Japanese student there in that language center. And she was married to a diplomat. So they were in Colombia because the husband's job, right? Kaori was her name. I never forget. And then she told me once, David, I have a friend. Her husband is a diplomat as well. And they have a daughter. Her name is Risa. And they're looking for an English teacher. Do you teach private lessons? And I'm like, sure. That's how I started teaching private lessons. And then another person came and talked to me. And then I got in a groove. And I found that I could make the same money teaching private lessons 8 hours a week than working 10 hours a day, because I was working 10 hours or sometimes 11 hours a day at the language center. So I found that interesting, right? So it also gave me an overview of, okay, so you have an idea and then you're good at this, you have that skill. What if you can do something beyond the job that you have? So it was a very beautiful life experience as well. And it happened because it's just a life opportunity. I seized it and it changed everything.
And it's just being open and paying attention and taking a bit of a risk. You could have just ignored, said, oh, I don't really do that, and stuck with your comfort zone, but you took the opportunity.
And you know what, John and I was fluent in English when I got that job, right? But my English was not what it is today. Part of why my English is the way it is today, it was because of that experience, because I was teaching while I was learning. And I was committed at the beginning because, again, it's the imposter syndrome. Oh my God, why did they hire me to do this job, right? When I see these people coming from the United States, from Australia, from Canada, right? Why me? So I committed, right? And I prepared my lessons and I studied on that, right? And it was crazy, John, because there was a period of 6 months where I was working 11 hours a day teaching English, right? Also because I'm absorbing all this by helping these people, and I'm helping myself too. I'm getting all this vocabulary, all this grammar, all these things, all that, right? So it's also something that I think students can take from this conversation as well. Imposter syndrome will always knock on your door. Always. Still does to me when I launch a new project or product or something. But I think imposter syndrome is not about saying, because there's something telling your brain, hey, this is new. But if you invest the time, if you invest your energy, and if you believe that you can do it eventually, it's going to be a learning curve for sure. So that was a very nice experience as well. And then after that, I helped my dad. He was working with some organic products, including quinoa, and he needed help to open a market in Bogota, which is where I'm from, the capital city. So I did that for a year before I moved to Canada in 2006. So that was also a great experience because, again, it taught me about more entrepreneurship and building relationships with people and talking to people that I never met before and engaging in conversation and listening to their needs, and bringing solutions and all that stuff. So I discovered also that I had that ability of connecting with people in a very deep and humane way and just building the personal connections. And then everything happens after, right? When you connect with someone on a personal level and you show that you care about them, right?
Such wonderful learning experiences, taking that discomfort and using it as motivation. Because as we all know, there are a couple of ways to react to it. What you did was that you used it to prepare and go ahead with it. But then there's also the tendency to over-prepare, which is really a way of avoiding. Because some people say, oh, I have to make it perfect before I get it right. And it never is, right?
It never is. It never is. The perfect moment will never arise.
Yeah.
So if you spend your life waiting for that moment to happen, you will miss a lot of opportunities that life presents to you.
And then you perfected your teaching techniques and your methods that way, from learning from experience rather than trying to anticipate every single possibility and holding you back from action.
You have to be honest with yourself and with what you know and what you don't, right? I remember the way the courses worked at that center. It was like the beginners, intermediate, advanced, and there was a course called superior, right? They gave me that superior course at one point, and I was looking at the content. I'm like, oh my God, what are these words? And I even showed it to an Australian student who was at the school learning Spanish. And he's like, we never, we never use this word in this book. What are people talking about? And there was a student there. And then again, she was super invested in her learning. And she would challenge you. And those are the best students. As a teacher, a student who challenges the best one because they challenge you, right? They make you think and work hard, and then they're trying to get their ROI. She did, and she asked questions. When I didn't know, I told her, I don't know, but let me find out. Or let's find out together. And she respected me a lot because of that, because I was not, oh yeah, sure, that's a synonym. No, didn't know. It was really complicated language. So it was a very interesting experience. I met amazing friends. It was a beautiful time of my life.
I'm going to jump on that point about your reaction as a teacher. That's also a bit of a cultural thing as well here too, because I think in some other cultures that is not looked upon very favorably. But I think for people coming to Canada, people who do that and they say, I don't know, but I'm going to go and take care of it, is something that's highly respected. So if you are in a situation where you don't know something, it's better to speak up and just say, hey, I'm not sure about this, but here's what I'm doing to correct that, rather than feeling you have to hide it some way or if you point out something to your manager or something that may challenge them in some way, they're going to react negatively.
Let me give another example. I had a class at George Brown that I taught. It was called Internship Preparation, something like that. And the class was a big class. It was like 55 students, chef students, right? And they were sitting, again, in clusters. Indians with Indians, Latinos with Latinos, Brazilians who are Latinos, but no, Brazilians with Brazilians, Koreans with Koreans, Chinese with Chinese, and Canadians with Canadians. But there was one Indian guy, international student, who was sitting with the Canadians. So what I did in that class, they had to do like a group project, right? So what I did, because I'm good with names and I know when I see a last name, I know where that last name is from, right? What I did is broke up the class into different groups, and every group had a different culture in it, right? Mm-hmm. So this is your team for the semester. The Indian guy who was with the Canadians, right? Hated that, right? Why? Again, challenge, right? Challenge is status quo, challenge. Okay, I'm paying $20,000 here, and you are telling that I have to sit with people that you want me to sit. Why? This is college. This is not elementary school, right? And I told him, look, this class is career internship preparation, and you guys are starting to be chefs. And you're going to work in kitchens in Toronto. In Toronto, you're going to be working in kitchens, and probably the staff in back of the house is going to be like 20 different nationalities. You are not going to work with your buddies. So this is real life preparation, right? Okay, you got it, whatever, right? It was like a little bit of a conflict at the beginning, and not from only him, but from a lot of the students, right? Because they're like, but why? If I am Canadian born and raised, I'm speaking English, why do I have to sit down with a Korean that I have to make a lot more effort to understand what they say? Or the Korean, they're going to speak English and maybe I don't understand everything and I will feel shy, whatever it is, right? All those things that go through your mind, all those barriers that you put before you engage with someone that can be a fruitful experience, right? Long story short, at the end of the semester, when they had to do the presentations, two of the things that I remember, the Indian guy I admire because again, he did what he had to do. He did, okay, I'm from India, but I'm not going to only hang out with my Indian people. I'm going to hang out with the Canadians because they are the ones with the network. They are the ones with this that I'm his friend. Where all the Canadians and still are. He's now a chef and stuff. And I invited once to one of my webinars and whatnot. So it's funny because he was the first that conflict and now it's mutual respect and stuff. And he messages me and he updates me on his new cooking ventures and stuff. Amazing. I like him a lot. And so he's like, you know what, David? I want to apologize for my behavior on the first day. I didn't get it, but it was amazing working with all these people, right? Because now I learned, imagine, so I come from India, right? So I come from one of the best cuisines in the world. But now I also know about some Japanese cuisine and Canadian cuisine and Mexican cuisine. So this was an amazing experience. Thank you. Okay. And there was one of the Canadian students and her group was very small. Her and two Korean guys, right? And she told me, you know what, David? Because of this experience, I have two friends that are Korean and they became some of my best friends. And this is it. This is what I have to say. And I'm like, you know what? My job is done here. My job is done, right? Because you would have never talked to them probably if it was not for this project. And now you know that they're humans like you, that they have pretty much the same interest because we all have the same interest regardless of where we come from, right? And now if you want to go to Korea at any point of your life, you have a house to go. You have a house to stay. So that's my job, John. That's my job. Build community, help people to amalgamate and just open their mind and their ears and listen to each other and learn from each other. That's it. It's easy, but we make it very complicated because of prejudice and the bias that we grow up with.
It's incredible just having that little change and the impact that it had, at least on two people that you know, and perhaps quite a bit more, getting them prepared for real life and expanding their horizons in a relatively simple way. Getting back to your experiences of that last year before you moved to Canada and learning to really deeply care about people in that respect.
It's not just a transaction, right? It's just like connecting with a person, right? My dad is okay, so I need your help. These are the products. I want you to maybe go around, like visit some stores and stuff, right? Okay, for sure. And I want to visit the stores. And again, what do they do here, right? What made you open this store? What's the idea behind it? Just get to know the people, the person, right? Get them to like you as well, right? Just go with an open mind and stuff so that people don't feel like a transaction because nobody likes to be a transaction. It was a really nice experience as well.
And you can apply that in terms of the networking as well, when
for
people
sure.
are looking for work. So
For sure, when you have your informational interviews, connect with the person at a personal level too, if you can. That's why I tell my clients and my students, when you have your informational interviews, look, this society is extremely busy. People don't have time. Nobody has time for nothing. Nobody has time for friends, for family, for anything, right? So if someone gives you their time for an informational interview, it's a gift. So try to connect with that person at personal level too. Ask something that is personal, that is outside the spectrum of their work and school, and take notes, and then give back with something that you find on your research that you think that they will like, and send that link in an email. It will mean the world to them. And again, they will feel, well, I was not just a transaction for this person. They understand that, sure, they want to get insights from me as a professional because they want to break into this field and I can give them the insights. But also they understand that I'm more than not just a professional in my job title, right? It's a really good approach for people to have, right?
it's a great lesson for anyone, whether you're a student, wherever you are in life. That was part one of the conversation with David Mendoza. And there were so many points that really resonated with me when I was having the conversation and watching it back again today. Just his willingness to, and his focus, even before he went on the exchange, when he was learning English, about focusing on learning it in a way that really he enjoyed by listening to music, as he mentioned in the comments, a lot of grunge at the time, but also his focus when he got to the language school and not spending time, not hanging out so much with people who were Spanish speakers, so that he could develop his English skills, and avoiding that comfort zone of being in staying in the different clumps, the different groups, and encouraging that in his students by mixing them around into different groups, because again, it's very natural for people to just stick with what you know, stick with what's comfortable, but you are not going to grow. And just seeing a couple of other comments coming up in the chat as well. So from Doreen Fernandez, regular participant, and also an excellent coach for resumes and interviews. I just delivered a webinar to an organization on networking, and one of the topics was coffee sessions. Exactly, yeah. And again, such an important thing, the opportunities to learn and use those informational interviews, those coffee chats, to learn things. Exactly what I said. Respect the person granting you their time and prepare for it. Yes. Really be aware, treat them as another person, and make it about them, as opposed to, as David said in the interview, about making it less transactional, figuring out what it is that you can get. Make it about what you can offer them. And there's going to be more talk about that actually in part two next week. And David just commenting, yes, Dorian Fernandez, yes, it all comes down to respect. Exactly. Respect the person's time. And if you approach them in the correct way, about, instead of asking for, can you look over my resume? Can you tell me about any opportunities? Use it as an opportunity. Hey, if you've got some time, perhaps you'd like to talk about, something. I'm interested in hearing your story, maybe how you got there. I'm sure that Doreen and David could give a lot more information about the ways to do those things. And another quick comment. Speaking of Doreen, my pleasure to attend your session, John. David, I love your energy. Yes, he's got that. He really has that energy that just really, just, you can see just even through the camera about the passion that he has for what he's focusing on and what he's talking about, which made the conversation really a pleasure. And speaking of the conversation, let's talk about part two coming up next week. So in part two, which is on Wednesday, August 16th at noon Eastern Daylight Time, David is going to talk about the journey to Orbit 5. So how he established Orbit 5, which is a job search platform that trains international newcomers to find ideal jobs in less than 15 weeks. We also talk about cultural differences in communication and the importance of listening and adapting to different cultures without losing one's sense of identity. and also embracing diversity. And David expresses his love for Canada and Toronto for its multiculturalism and the unique experiences it offers. And he encourages people not to take this diversity for granted, just even as we started to talk about here. We talk about it even more next week. So I encourage you to tune in for that. Again, that's Wednesday, August the 16th at 12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Until then, keep navigating your way between cultures towards your goals.